Alright, so here's a little demo for the synth patch I made for the Cardinal synthesizer. Here's what it sounds like. And essentially, I just made that with a few little plugins here. So I'm going to go ahead and showcase exactly how that's working. Basically, what we have here is we have a MIDI input that feeds into this vocoder, which takes a saw wave out into this liquid filter. Now, essentially, we have a couple of things going on with this liquid filter. This filter basically takes in the saw wave and modulates the frequency. So we can actually hear what's going on here. We'll go ahead and detach this real quick, and we can play a sound. Now, essentially, what's going on here is we have two oscillators. One of them feeding through this compressor, so you can see the oscillator oscillating here, and the compressor sort of keeps it a little smaller. But essentially, all that's going on here is this oscillator feeds into this oscillator, which I'll get to this later, essentially just feeds into the frequency modulator and does what I was doing manually with my mouse automatically via the oscillators. Now, the reason I have this compressor here is so that, as you can see, by this big red and green thing, is sort of modulating up and down, right? Now, what happens when I remove the compressor, you can see it starts fluttering. And what that does is if we play a piece of audio with that fluttering, it sounds like this. We don't like that. That's not a friend. I think it just sounds bad and annoying. But I do want to keep the sort of dual, sort of two-dimensional sound profile, as it sounds more dynamic than the single sound profile. We can actually play that and see what it sounds like. And see, it's very monotonous. I don't necessarily love that. So what I do is I feed this one into that one, but through the compressor first, and what that gives us is a more dynamic sound profile, which is quite helpful. Now, getting to this feeds all the way from the host parameters. So all that means is I can go into my DAW and I can drag this parameter down, and you can see that red bar here that was there before and is no longer there, and so this just completely cancels the out. So theoretically, if we were to drag this back up, we can look and the out is now flashing where it wasn't before. So essentially it just cancels it out. That's all it's doing, and just feeds in from the host parameter. So now if we play something, it is just linear. It doesn't have any of that modulation, but we can re-add it by dragging out that parameter once again. Cool. So moving past the filtered shenanigans that I've been doing, we have this texture synthesizer here. Now what the texture synthesizer does is it sort of gives a lot of depth to the sound. If you actually just listened to the raw output here, it would sound a lot different without this texture synthesizer, even with the filter. Let's take a look, right? So here's what it sounds like right now. And if we take the texture synthesizer out of the picture and feed that directly in there, we can take a look again. See how we lose a lot of that depth? That's something I wanted to avoid and sort of add a bit of sort of depth and area to the sound profile. So here we have a pretty large grain size, pretty high density, the texture is pretty high, and we've actually pitched these grains down an octave. So it sort of adds a bit of dynamic nature to the sound profile, as actually you have half dry and half wet sound going in. So essentially what that means is that half of the sound comes from the liquid filter and goes straight through the plugin without any modification, and the other half comes through the plugin, gets modified with these grains, and then gets fed out. So essentially, if we wanted to be fully ingrained, we could make that fully wet. If we wanted to just feed it straight through and ignore the aspects of the plugin, we could make it fully dry. Now, moving on, we have another one of these limiters here. This one is actually determined by the retrigger aspect and the gate aspect from the MIDI in. Now, all this means is when we hit a MIDI key, it actually creates this temporal profile for the key. So when you press the key, it goes up, so that's the attack. For sustain, what sustain can do, it can actually reduce the peak. So it goes all the way up from the attack and then comes back down. You can hear that, right? So if we make the attack longer, maybe make the sustain a little higher, we can hear it go up and then back down. Now, I like to keep the sustain up and the decay in a normal fashion, but we can sort of make that attack a little faster, and the release, we can sort of have it extend out. So, see, I'm not pressing the key anymore, but it's still playing, which is interesting. You can basically make that do whatever the hell you want with it, and do some weird stuff with that. So all that's doing is feeding into this input for the VCA, and then feeding out the results. So essentially, it's not playing any of this saw when we're not pressing a key, which is helpful. And we can apply these temporal profiles to it by modulating that voltage in real time as the gates and the retriggers come in. Cool. Now, here is a little reverb plugin that I added pretty recently that takes the final sort of audio profile and just slaps a living heck ton of reverb on it. I wanted to basically, with this, sort of be able to add it and take it out, and it's just at opportune times in the song, right? So if I wanted to sort of reverb and then like let it sort of simmer for a little bit, I can toggle it on. And if I just wanted to pass through, then I can toggle it off, which is what this second output does. So if we go ahead and play it, I'll go ahead and toggle on and off this second output so we can listen to it live. So you can see the effects of the reverb staying in there. I'm not completely happy with this at the moment. I think I would like to work on it a little bit more and do what I can to sort of make it a little bit more like longer lasting and potentially a little bit more impactful. So maybe find a better reverb plugin or whatever. But for now, this is what I have going on. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to share here. Cardinal is amazing, Arter is amazing. All the tools I'm using here are all free and open source. And I definitely encourage you to take a look at them. And that's all from me. Hope you learned something about audio stuff. I know I did. I had a lot of fun making this and working on it, though I will admit it is probably not the best use of my time as far as grades and or employment go. Regardless, that is what I did, and I will have to live with that. Regardless, bye.